And a good Monday afternoon to you. Welcome on Into Lunch with Claibs and Joe, powered by Gray Bar here on claibsonline.com. I'm Joe Roderick, joined alongside by Mike Claiborne. And Claibs, a happy December to you.
And good to see you as well, sir.
Yeah.
An
Oh, and a
interesting
happy
December.
belated birthday, Claibs.
Well, thank you.
Thanksgiving and your birthday all on one day.
Yeah, I lucked out, and it was a nice, quiet Thanksgiving. The weather was not what I'd call ideal, but it worked out. I'm here, and that's all that really counts.
I ran an 8K in Forest Park the morning of
Yeah.
Thanksgiving. A lot of hills out there in Forest Park on the route it took you, and it was real cold that morning too. I think I was one layer too short
Mm.
that day. Yeah,
Now, how long does that take? Me
ran
not being a metric guy.
nine. It was so 8K is about 5 miles. Ran 9-minute miles, so it took me 45 minutes to do that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, see, I could think of 45 for a better way to spend 45 minutes, but to each his own.
Hey, when you run that and you finish that and then you look at the calories burned, you're off. You're ahead of the game on Thanksgiving already.
Well, I can think of some other ways to burn calories, and I wouldn't be that cold. I'm just saying.
Anyway,
Take a
lots
nap,
of
get up and
football.
eat, and then take another nap.
lots of football over the
Yeah, a
past
lot
several
of
days,
football.
Claibs. One more game tonight. I don't. Was it Broncos and Browns? I think,
I
or
believe you're right.
I think maybe it's. I didn't really care about what it is. I probably won't watch a single snap of it. But that wasn't the case for all the games Thursday through Sunday. Just I don't even know where to start with the NFL this past week, but you and I sat here and we thought it was going to be a rough go of it in the early games. And that first game not only was exciting, but we saw a coach get fired live on a national stage for a decision he made.
Well, he was dead man walking. He had lost his locker room, and this was probably the final straw. And I remind people, nobody seems to remember when he was at Missouri, and it was a similar situation where he would make defensive faux pas that cost them quite a few games. I was never a big believer in him. I know he went to Indianapolis and did a nice job there, and it bounced around, but he was in that coaching circle, and so somebody thought it was a good idea to give him a crack. It didn't work. But I think, man, when you go to Chicago now, you have to think about where does it go from here? Because you start looking at the other coaches who went there and none of them survived. And I don't know how you change that culture, but I thought he was going to get it. And I think you and I have even talked about it. I think there's going to be 7, maybe 8 jobs that are going to be open
Yeah.
this year. And they're coming from everywhere. And Mike Martz said something last week about how these young guys just don't have enough real ring experience about coaching. And if you listen to Mike's story about all the things he did to get to the level he became a successful coach, I think we've gotten away from that because we all think the next guy is going to be some young phenom. And I just don't think there are enough trees in the backyard where those kind of guys hang off of it. I think you still have to pay your dues. I look at Mike Tomlin. Mike Tomlin was probably the last young guy that was unproven, but where he had been as far as coaching was concerned on the pro level and the college level gave him an inroads. And obviously the Steelers thought enough of him to hire him. And what are we now, 18 years and never had a losing season?
Never.
And everybody wants to play for him.
Yeah.
So it's one of those things that I had a friend of mine, we were talking about it. He said, well, he ought to step back, man, and kind of recharge himself. Recharge himself? What do you mean? I mean, the guy's, he's playing some tough football. He's still a player or two short. He's hurt a little bit on defense. His offensive line is starting to come together a little bit, but man, I couldn't think of a better place to be than being in Pittsburgh coaching that team.
And he has respect to the locker room so much that after the game this past weekend was called out George Pickens, who committed another 2 unsportsmanlike conduct penalties this past weekend, just calling him out in the press conference, saying that he has to grow up. And
you know what though? Here's the difference about that. I'm sure he shared that with him before he shared it with the media.
And he knows he's been around this
Yeah.
long enough to where
He's
he
he's
knows he
told
can go
George
and he can
Pickens.
say that and
Yeah,
he
this
can
wasn't a shock to
demand
George
the
Pickens.
respect of those players to say that. And I'm sure there's quite a few leaders in that locker room too that have said the same thing to him, that this isn't going to be news, and that if George Pickens complains about it, you'll have about 4 or 5 other guys going, yeah, man, you do need to grow up.
Well, here if there's anyone who has experience with individuals like that, it's Mike Tomlin. And let's just go back to Antonio Brown, Juju Smith Schuster. I mean, there are some guys that have come through there only to see their careers go down in
Who was
flames
the
after
running
they
back?
left.
The running Le'Veon Bell?
Le'Veon Bell's another
Yeah.
one. Never to be heard from
I
again.
would, and yeah, I'd tell, hey George, you want to go do? Yeah, you want to go do your own thing? All right, here's a list of all the guys that left.
But I think in his case, though, I think because of his youth, they can save him. But as I was saying, whatever Mike Tomlin says about him, he's already said it to him face to face. This is nothing that George Pickens was, whoa, what did he say? George Pickens knows, and he knew he was wrong. And, it's never about you, man. And he's always made it about the team. And that's what makes him a respected coach. Um, but one of the things, I got to get to this while it's still fresh on my mind, because we saw a lot over the weekend. This extracurriculars after the whistle's got to stop. Okay. It's got to stop. The cheap play has got to stop. This whole flag burying thing on the field's got to stop. And it's an embarrassment for the Big Ten to fine Michigan and Ohio State $100,000 for what took place on Saturday. Joe, they made $100,000 in the first quarter selling beer. Okay. So that's not even a slap on the wrist. You want me to tell you how you get everybody's attention? Whoever guys are in this scuffle, their position coach gets fined. The head coach gets fined. And we're not talking about $100. We're talking about serious money. And I can guarantee you all this stuff's going to stop.
Yeah. You got two, and that's two programs right there that might be worth $1 billion on their own.
Yeah, exactly. So let me get this straight. You're going to find a team $100,000 that by most accounts has a $22 million payroll for football players.
Yeah.
So how does that
Michigan just paid a quarterback, just paid a 17-year-old $10 million to come play quarterback for them next year.
So the money, this doesn't work. And maybe there's league restrictions on the amount of money you can find someone, and that happens as far as schools, but they got to change this. We got to get this game back. And the reason why is because this is the same crap that takes place at JFL games. It happens in high school. And all this stuff they see it on TV. You got parents wanting to fight each other. You got coaches that now want to fight each other in JFL and high school games. And now we see it on the field. And they got to fix it, man. They got to come down hard on people. And because this is not what I turn the TV on for.
Well, we have the latest AP polls. We'll probably circle back to the pro football side of things in just a bit. But since you brought up college football, let's look at the latest AP polls, Claibs. We are just a few days away from the start of the conference championship weekends. And I would love to know, when we see tomorrow night, when we see these rankings come out, I would love to know, I'd love to see just kind of what the committee says and kind of a look into what these games mean this weekend. Which games?
Let me ask you this question.
Something this weekend. Yeah.
Let me ask you this question. How much of an impact do these games have on? Is there going to be another ranking, or do we already have everybody bracketed?
I don't think. That's so okay. Here you go. Here is the top 12 right now. Oregon, Ohio State. I'm sorry, to the AP. Let me grab the AP poll that we have, because that changes after the Ohio State loss this weekend. Oregon still sits at number 1 for the week, and then following that, it's Texas, Penn State, Notre Dame, Georgia, Tennessee, Ohio State, SMU, Indiana, Boise State, Alabama 11, ASU number 12. Those are your top 12 right now.
Well,
the biggest one that I look at right now when you talk about are they set in stone, This weekend, you will have on Saturday, and this is the final game on Saturday, Clemson and SMU.
One of
That
them
is
is
for
not
the
going to be in this thing.
That is for the ACC championship.
Yeah. Well, Clemson is on the outside looking in.
But if they win, they're the ACC champion.
They're going to replace SMU. You're right.
So Miami's out. I mean, Miami's sitting at 14 right now.
Well, here's the thing about Miami.
Miami has no shot right now. Miami's done. Their second loss.
Schedule sucks.
They lost to Syracuse. Miami just screwed themselves. They're done.
Yeah, they're done. Yeah, they you know what? They took over for Florida State from having a weak schedule. And again, how many times did I tell you about you got to go play somebody, man? And they didn't. And it came back to haunt them. So for all the hooting and hollering that they did, they're going to watch this thing on TV. I'm telling you, the team that's going to get back in this thing is Alabama, man.
That's if Alabama is ranked 11th right now. I don't know how you bump them. I don't know how you or what happens to bump them out. Like, are you going? So right now, if Arizona State is 12 right now, and by all accounts, Arizona State had a real good year. The Arizona State 10-2 on the season. When the rankings come out tomorrow, they might be number 10. They might be 10 or 11. Their losses this year came at Texas Tech, at Cincinnati. They have beaten BYU. They beat Kansas State. Are you going to punish a team like Arizona State for losing their conference championship game that Alabama didn't play in a conference championship game?
Yeah.
And that's so if Iowa State wins, because if Iowa State wins, they're the Big 12 champions.
It's something that I think they didn't think enough about when they put this whole thing together to have this sort of conflict, and it's something that they're going to have to address.
I don't know if you have to address. I mean, I don't think. I mean, I think we are going to get chaos every year, and I think you knew that going into it.
True.
That you're going to get chaos, and I'd much rather have chaos when we're trying to figure out the 12 teams than chaos with 4 teams. Because last year, I still think it's bullshit that Florida State went undefeated and didn't make it into the Final Four last year. They showed us who they are, but I still think you go undefeated in a Power 5 conference. I think it's BS that they didn't make it last year.
I think, though, what you're going to have to do, and you don't want to do it, but you have to because nobody else is going to. You have to make these teams play a better non-conference schedule. You got to put one legitimate game on that schedule. And if you look at some of these games on some of these schedules, that's why nobody took Miami serious. I mean, that's why BYU, when they got knocked off, it was like, yeah, what do you expect? So I think, and I don't know who mandates that. Is it the leagues? Is it the NCAA? Is it the championship committee? But man, in order to help eliminate some of these debates, you got to put somebody on the schedule that's legit.
But to play devil's advocate here.
But let me finish. Because we always talk about, well, these games are scheduled so far in advance. Okay, starting next year, one of those bye games you have on your schedule, buy them out and find somebody to play.
And there's
plenty of ways to do it.
Is it Miami's fault that Florida's bad?
No.
Okay. But then, they have Florida on the schedule every year.
Well, but here's the thing. You're going to be stuck with a regional game, a rivalry game that you have to play. And you know what? In that game, if Miami was a really good team, they'd have done what we saw Franklin do to Maryland the other day. He ran it up on them because he wanted to prove a point.
They won 41-17. That was week 1. That was all the way back in week 1.
No, I'm talking about what Penn State. No, I'm talking about what Penn State just did to
Pittsburgh,
Maryland.
Yeah.
Yeah. And remember, he and Loxley were upset with each other because Loxley felt like you had your ones on the field, and Franklin's point was you had your ones on the field late in the game. I got 2s and 3s on the field, and they want to play football.
Yeah.
But the bottom line was, and we've seen it before, where teams were running up on somebody just to get everybody's attention. And so if Florida isn't that good and you're stuck with them, then you better run it up. You better.
41-17 in week 1. I'd say that's running it up.
Well, we didn't know Florida was going to have quarterback problems.
Right.
But here's the thing. Here's the one consoling thing about that is at least they beat a team. They were dealing with a team in the SEC. Okay. So I think the issue that comes into play is the weakness of the ACC. And I don't know what the rest of Miami's schedule looks like. And I'll pull it up here to see who else they play. And that might be a red herring
They
as
didn't,
well.
they didn't play. I mean, they played South Florida. They played Ball State. They played some other garbage team. I mean, they didn't. The rest of it wasn't great. No.
They played Cal. I mean, Cal's in the conference now. They're in the conference now. Yeah. Who else did they play? I'm looking at.
I know you got and trying to figure out if it's a conference.
Oh, they
game
played
or
FAMU.
Games. Yeah, that was who it was. Yeah.
So in fairness, you may have a point here because here's what Miami did. As I always say to you, play a regional opponent, play an in-state opponent, play a comparable conference opponent, and then you have your right to a blood donor. So they played a comparable conference in Florida. They played an in-state team in Florida A&M. And I assume that Ball State was the one that they had the blood donor game, considering they beat them 62-0. South Florida, in-state, at one point, South Florida was a more competitive team. So Miami doesn't have that much of a gripe. Well, they do have a gripe, and I understand it. I think this is the year that all those other teams that they played weren't very good. But when you look at them as far as my criteria, I don't have a problem with it.
And that's where, and just to sit here, I mean, I could see it from, Wisconsin, you know what? They played Alabama. They welcomed Alabama up to their school. They had Alabama on the schedule. Good for Wisconsin. They weren't a good team this year, but they still went out there and they got one of the biggest programs in the country to come to them. With the expansion of some of these conferences right now, if you are a school like Miami, where now you have Cal and Stanford in the Atlantic Coast Conference, and you have to go to one of those schools probably every year out and play out in California for a conference game. If I'm the AD, I'm the football coach, and I'm sitting here trying to come up with an excuse and give you an excuse as to why I'm playing Florida A&M or South Florida. You're making me travel 3,000 miles to go play a conference game. I'm going to play some of these non-conference games close to home and save my kids the travel. I know it's I know, yes, I'm aware that it's not a good excuse, but I'm going to say that's what you're going to have these schools saying. Same in the Big Ten.
And you know what they'll say to you?
Ten, you go from East Coast to West Coast in the Big Ten. So of course, yeah, hey, when I can, I'm going to keep it close, and I'm going to play teams close.
So you know what they're going to say to you? Okay, we'll go find another guy who can manage this. That's what they'll do. They'll go find another coach that can manage it.
Because I'm saying when you're complaining about the scheduling, I'm saying when you're complaining about the polls and the scheduling and the strength of schedule, I'm going to say, hey, you know what? Nobody in the SEC is having to travel out to the West Coast to play these conference games.
Hey, but you know what? That's not their problem. You know what? The SEC was smart enough to merge and get teams closer to home before Pac-12 disintegrated. The ACC was on a prayer and a hope because even basketball had sunken. So we're talking about two conferences who weren't paying attention to what was going on. Even the Big Ten got smart and figured it out a few years ago that they needed to be bigger. Okay. And nobody understood how you can go play Rutgers and Penn State. But guess what? They figured it out. And it's been a godsend to them to have those schools in your conference.
I will say this over with teams right now, and this is another part. This does hurt Miami. 0 wins over current top 25 teams. You have Colorado, Miami, Clemson, Texas, Indiana, SMU, Iowa State. They have not won a single game against a team currently in the top 25. Now, Texas, they're ranked number 2 in the nation. Texas is in for sure. But that's where you look at an SMU or you look at a Clemson, and that's what makes that a play-in game. That's what makes that's going to be your one key win, and you're going to get in. The loser's not going to have anything on their agenda, on their criteria for why they should be a playoff team. Because of that. Some of that's not their fault.
I would say a lot of it's not their fault. You know,
Mizzou's also on that list. Mizzou has 0 wins over top 25 teams this year.
Yeah, well, you know, Missouri didn't. You know what?
When it's all said and done, Missouri only played 2 teams that are actually ranked right now.
Yeah, and so
or 3, I guess. Texas A&M. Yeah.
and
They're
wasn't
still
very good
ranked.
against any of them,
No.
in my opinion. Which can we? I know we're all over the place right now,
Yeah.
but let's get on Missouri for a second. What do you think? How do you think the season went?
They didn't finish in the top 12. I don't think it wasn't a good season.
Okay,
Their expectations, they were ranked as high as 6 at some point in the year. They were expected, I think, to, if any, at worst, lose 2 games and still somehow manage their way into the tournament.
Yep, I couldn't
So
agree with you more.
disappointing season.
Okay, we're on the same page.
Yeah.
Because this was the year you knew you were only going to have Brady Cook and Luther for this year. And you got some other guys that you're only going to have for this year. And when the portal rolls around, you may have even less. And we had been told that this was a team that was ready to contend. Okay, you're coming off of last year. You felt good about yourself. I think it's a disappointing season. Now, somebody can tell you, well, they have a chance to win 10 games. Yeah, they probably would. But the 3 games that they lost are more glaring than any of the 10 that they won. Because you got your ass handed to you. Okay. You didn't just lose, you got beat. And even in the South Carolina game, the way you ended that game just says you weren't as good as you thought you were.
They have, by the way, in the past 24 hours, they have flipped 2 recruits that are now coming to Mizzou next year. One, a running back out of Cleveland, who originally was committed to Kentucky. He flipped, and now he's going to Mizzou. He is ranked as the number 7 running back in the 2025 freshman class. Another one was committed to Pitt. It's a 4-star wide receiver. He is now going to Mizzou for next year. So they were able to flip 2 guys from their commitments to come to Mizzou. I have not seen anything of recruits that they have lost or have flipped against them.
So that's really nice that they flip some guys. But you flip 2 guys from conferences that you don't play against.
Kentucky.
Well, okay. Well, where's Kentucky at in this whole thing? I mean, they talking about firing Stoops, so maybe that's why the guy flipped.
Yeah.
But my point being is that let me know when you start flipping guys from Georgia, or let me know when you start flipping guys from Texas or Texas A&M, or even Florida. I mean, they still have good football players there. They just haven't been very good as a team. And God forbid if you can flip somebody from Alabama.
Right.
Miles McVay could walk in here right now and start at left tackle and be as good as anybody that they have on this football team. Kid from East St. Louis. So, I mean, it's possible. But my point being, I've learned this, and I will say this. When I hear about people getting flipped and I start hearing about star recruiting, it doesn't mean jack to me anymore because I haven't seen enough of that be productive on the field.
And to me right now, the reason for me it doesn't mean that much when you get this freshman recruit is with the transfer portal. Number one, you're going to get guys, freshmen, that think that they're going to go in and start right away, get pissed, and leave after 1 year and go to a new school. And Mizzou very well could benefit from that. Absolutely.
Well, they got a guy right now at Mizzou who was all Metro, all state, all everything, and didn't get on the field this year. And every school is calling him because they know he can play for them because they have told him 4 different things on where he's going to play, what position he's going to play. And he didn't play any of them.
Yeah.
So you're going to have guys you have to internally re-recruit who was a guy who was getting offers from everywhere but wanted to stay home. So I don't know whether he stays or not, but my point is, you're in the recruiting business every day now. And I think what we get caught up in is these rankings and the evaluations of people we don't even know. We don't know how they come about it. So somewhere between a questionable evaluation and questionable coaching, I don't know. And the reason why I bring up coaching, Luther Burden was reputed to be the best player in the game. One of the best players ever played at Missouri as a receiver, right? If Luther was that good, why didn't he get the ball at least twice in the first half on Saturday?
Yeah.
I mean, I think play calling was certainly questionable. And Grant, I know Luther's being doubled, okay? I get it. But the great ones find a way. Great coaching finds a way. Great quarterbacks find a way. I didn't see that. And if I'm Luther, if I was Luther, I'd have to think. I know he's got another year, and I know he's not coming back. But I don't think he'd come back anyway. By the way, this season is gone for him.
And I think a big thing for that, if he was, and I agree with you too, if he's this projected first round pick, why wait another year? And unless you're going to have, I know Marvin Harrison Jr. was offered apparently more money to stay at Ohio State last year than he would have made as a rookie. But again, if you can start that NFL career, why not start it? But a big thing for any of the guys coming back, okay, who are you bringing in as quarterback? If we think we're going to be a top 12 team next year, it's not, Brady Cook's gone. We saw enough out of Drew Pine. And I don't think it's Sam Horn either.
Well, let's put it this way. The guy who's going to be quarterbacking at Missouri next year hadn't taken enough snaps anywhere. Okay.
No.
And here's the other thing, Joe.
I mean, there's going to be guys out there.
No, I disagree. I don't think there are enough good quarterbacks out there.
There is going to be a free agent quarterback out there this year.
Just because you're a free agent doesn't make you an All-American.
Quinn Ewers might be a free agent quarterback out there in the transfer portal.
So Quinn Ewers,
I'm not saying there's a chance Mizzou gets him. I'm just saying you have a guy out there who many people thought was a Heisman finalist, that he's not going back to Texas next year to play quarterback.
Well, get ready to spend a lot of money. I think the question I would ask is, who has better players right now? Is Quinn Ewers going to be coming? Is he taking a step down just to go play?
Yeah.
If he comes to Missouri?
I don't know. Texas is up there with Alabama, Ohio State, Georgia. I mean, they are up there top tier. So anywhere
and Missouri
goes,
isn't.
It is a step down, but he's still staying in the SEC. And does Quinn Ewers make you a top 12 team?
What if Quinn Ewers says, I want to go to Alabama?
Is Milroe a senior?
I think he's done.
Okay. That'd be fun.
I mean, or if he says, and I'm just using some other schools, and I don't know what the class status is. But if Quinn Ewers wanted to go somewhere that was comparable to within his conference, or if Quinn Ewers wanted to say, you know what, I think I'd like to go to Ohio State. They're going to have a new coach. Maybe one of our coaches from this staff will go there.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, so I think we're all over the place with regard to what this is going to look like next year. And again, we were on the subject of Missouri, which, as I said, I'm disappointed. And maybe because of its start, as you mentioned, they were top 6 at one point. I think I was more disappointed in how they got beat compared to who they beat.
Yeah. Yeah, the blowout losses, that doesn't do you any good for that. All right, we started on NFL. We got away from it, and we ended up talking a lot of college football. Let's take a break, and let's get back into the NFL when we come back right here on Lunch with Claibs and Joe, powered by Gray Bar here on Claibs Online.
Are you ready for a challenging and rewarding career? There are quality jobs in the construction industry.
I got out of college and my career choices were very limited, and this provided me with a plan for the present and the future at the same time.
I actually have a bachelor's degree in psychology, and I was making less than I make as a first-year apprentice painter.
I didn't go to college. I have no college debt. I make more money than the majority of people I know that went to college.
Take your first step towards a rewarding career. Visit stlouispdf.org.
Back here at Lunch with Claibs and Joe. Back to the NFL, Claibs, as we saw almost all of the games out of Week 13 come and go. One left tonight. It is your Monday Night Football game, and as we mentioned earlier, it's Browns at the Broncos this evening. Broncos 7-5 in a playoff position right now. Start with the Sunday night game. It was a lot of fun to see a game in the snow and all of the top-tier professional athletes struggle to kind of battle with the elements in that, and just Buffalo dominating another team in those elements. They know how to play in it. San Francisco, they didn't. They weren't sure what to do, and similar to what we saw on Thanksgiving, you get a team from Miami to go up to Green Bay and play in the freezing cold up there, and that's just, it's true home field advantage up there for those teams.
You really think so, huh? And here's why I asked the question. And maybe you know the answer. I don't. How many times do you think Buffalo practices outside?
I don't know the answer to that. I bet they have an outdoor facility. I mean, they have, I'm sure, an indoor-outdoor facility that they'll go out for a little bit in that. They can go out there and they can brave the elements for a little bit.
So you think that they were out there when it was snowing practicing?
You don't think they'll go out there for a little bit and just work on some things?
What, 20 minutes? So what day of the week is that? And the reason why I'm saying it, so I don't know if you know how a team practices doing.
Yeah.
You're off. You go through a walkthrough on Monday. You're off on Tuesday. You put your offense in on Wednesday. You put your defense in on Thursday. You go special teams, or you put the whole package together. Light walkthrough on Friday. Another walkthrough on Saturday. So my question is, at what point is it more? I think it's more psychological than anything else. Throw in the fact that San Francisco was short on defense, and when you don't have Trent Williams, I'm sorry, your offense isn't going to be that good.
Right.
But I think for fans, we get a kick out of watching guys struggle. But I'm not one that's totally sold that it's always weather. Now with the Miami situation, they can't replicate what they deal with in Green Bay. And obviously coaches look at the schedule and they see, all right, let's get outside for a little bit just so guys can say they've done it. Because I can guarantee you this, most players that play for both of those teams have never dealt with the element. Okay, maybe Josh Allen has because he went to Wyoming. But
and Buffalo plays at least one of these games every year, it seems. So a lot of these guys have played in it last year, the year before. So they have grown accustomed to playing in that. Not to mention
they have minimal experience
guys too in the mix.
They have minimal experience.
Know what to get and know kind of how to prepare you for the game in certain situations.
So you're telling me that the San Francisco 49 equipment staff was reasonably ill prepared?
I'm saying that they know what little things here and there that they have. I'm sure the San Francisco guys can go and ask around the NFL and get, whatever insights to it, but I'm going to guess there has to be a home field advantage to that.
No sale here. I'm sorry. No. You know what? This game, too many people play it and too many people move around. Everybody knows what you need to have on the sideline and everybody knows what you have to do. It's just like saying, how going to Denver. Oh, well, Broncos have an advantage. I guarantee you this, when the Chiefs roll in there and one of these good teams roll in there, nobody's talking about altitude. You still have to play the game. Buffalo was a better team than the San Francisco 49ers. They didn't need the weather. They didn't need the weather to beat the 49ers. 49ers just aren't very good. But I know if we as fans, and I'm one of them, I think we love using that mantra of, man, the elements had a lot to do with it. Yeah, well, yeah, you know what? Kicking a football in that environment is like kicking a brick. Okay, and I accept that, but both sides have to do it. I thought Buffalo's offensive line, they were good before any flake of snow hit the ground yesterday, and they've been that way all year long. San Francisco, as I mentioned, was light up front. They were short two real good starters. They were short defensively as a whole. And their offense never got any what I could call traction because when you don't have your big guy out there, everything changes. Buffalo's defense changed. They didn't have to go. They knew that San Francisco couldn't run the ball to the corner. They knew all they could do was try and stay inside, and that's why they stacked the middle. So situation, I'm just not sure if it's as much of an impact as people want to make it seem like.
Josh Allen last night becomes the first quarterback in NFL history to pass for a touchdown, rush for a touchdown, and catch have a receiving touchdown all in the same game, even though he is credited with having 0 catches in the game. Claibs.
Yeah, it was. You know what? We're seeing that a little bit more. I mean, Kansas City has done it a lot, where it's almost like a rugby game.
How about did you watch the beginning of the Lions game and the play they tried to run?
Yeah,
that Dan Campbell tried to run with was it Puel on the
the offensive tackle?
He has been sacked more times than he has allowed a sack this year,
I
Claibs.
saw that.
Yeah.
You know what, though? I'm going to tell you what's fun about that. And even when I was in school, if you ran one of those gadget plays for a lineman, I guarantee you, man, practice is a whole lot more fun, and he ain't going to forget to play. And when they call it, and I'm sure they practiced that before. We had Mike Martz, and I was on his show last week. They talked about plays that they had practiced all year long, trying to find the right time to show them. And I'm sure Detroit just didn't pull that one out of the trunk of their car for that particular game. You know, each team probably has a half a dozen plays similar to that they just figure out when can we use it. And they may go a whole season where they don't use it. But don't think that these offensive linemen don't know there's one waiting for them if they call his number.
Speaking of plays in there, I know that Martz and JT, they don't talk really any college on talking football, but one thing to bring up that I might throw in there to ask Martz this weekend, the end of the Georgia Tech game this past week in college football ended up going 8 overtimes, and the announce team was talking a lot about at the end of it, you don't have that many plays from the 3-yard line. You kind of run out at a certain point. You've used all those extra or those 2-point conversion plays, and you're just kind of making stuff up on the fly. So I'd kind of like to know Martz's thoughts on just how many you have in a playbook at a certain time.
You know, it's a good question, but I think there are more plays that you can vary from in that situation. Now, I think from a defensive standpoint, it's probably easier for you because you have less yardage to defend, but the yardage you have to defend is a very small space. Mm-hmm. So I think that you can – I think there's more plays that you can use and you just break them off shorter. And maybe it's like helter-skelter flag football. You know, you just keep moving around till you're open. So I think the challenge is how many legitimate snaps do the linemen have in them? In pass protection or run blocking, and you got and you know the one down you take off is the one down that cost you. So there's a lot of things that go into it. I think the playbook can be expanded a little bit more. You would just shorten things, and I wouldn't worry about down and distance in that situation.
Claibs, one of the most anticipated games yesterday, Eagles versus the Ravens. Saquon Barkley, Derrick Henry, both featured in that game. The Eagles win again, improving to 10-2 on the year. Ravens with their 5th loss now on the season. I don't think it's going to affect their playoff chances, but still a blow to them, losing 24-19 in that one. What'd you see in that matchup from those two teams?
I just saw a team in Baltimore that has a hard time getting over the hump. I don't know whether it's play calling or what. You know, Baltimore's defense was always a little questionable. I know that numbers wise, they had impressed some people, but you know, I try to remind people that Ray Lewis ain't out there. Okay, Bart Scott's not out there. They're using a whole new group of guys, and in their situation, I think they got worn down because Saquon Barkley, man, they kept running the same play. They kept running counters inside. And Barkley looked for a hole, and he took advantage of it. But on the offensive side, I think the problem that you run into is their receivers aren't what I would deem game breakers, but they're very competent. And I think sometimes you get in a situation where, man, you got 6 in one hand, half dozen in the other. They know we're going to run Henry at some point. But at some point, and what I saw Philadelphia do, and they got away with it a couple times. They put 8 in the box a couple of times, and they dared Derrick Henry because they played man coverage, and their corners played some really good coverage last night. The safety slipped up and was trying to be all over the field. Maybe he shaded a little bit to the weak side, but he did some things last night. Their defense, I know they gave Vic Fangio a lot of credit last night, and a lot of credit was due to him and how that defense really kept Baltimore off balance.
Right now, playoff picture, the Broncos, as I mentioned, they play tonight, 7-5 on the year. Indianapolis, 6-7. They're on the outside looking in. Miami, 5-7 on the outside looking in. Cincinnati, 4-8. As they lose another one last night. I want to say, I think they have scored the 4th most points in the NFL this year as of right now, and have 4 wins. to show for that.
Defense has not been very good. They've had some injuries. Right now is I think it was Bart Scott who once said they couldn't stop a nosebleed. I mean, they just can't. And Joe Burrow has had a pretty good season. I'm just amazed that they don't have more of a running game. They let Joe Mixon go. You have 2 quality receivers and a really solid tight end. And for some reason, it's just not working. So maybe you have to look in between the tackles and figure out why they aren't able to generate more. But on defense, other than Hendrickson, they've been a little short. And, they've had some injuries as well. And you know what? Now is this time of the year where the injuries really start to catch up with teams. And you and I talked about this last week. Teams are made, everybody gets a first-round draft choice. But everybody gets a 4th and a 5th round pick too. And if you don't have coaches that can coach these 4th and 5th round guys up where they can step in and make a contribution, it's going to be pretty hard to beat anybody when you really need to. And I saw the one kid last night who stuck Derrick Henry late in the game, form tackle. I mean, here's a guy that was a middle round draft choice to just roll up. And this is how you teach tackling. And that's something that you have to give your scouts credit for, and being able to say, this is where we see this guy at down the road. And you have to have those sort of players on both sides of the ball to be able to do that.
NFC playoffs right now, you have Seattle 7-5, Arizona and LA both 6-6 on the year. So and San Francisco 5-7. So all 4 teams alive in the NFC West, and the NFC South, Atlanta and Tampa at 6-6. I guess you still have to put New Orleans in the mix at 4-8. I mean, they're just 2 games back down there.
What a depressing division that is.
Every year it seems like we talk about a team that's all you got to do is win 9 games and you're guaranteed a playoff spot in that division.
I mean, even when Brady was there, they had the good run that one year. But, man, every year you look, it's Atlanta, it's New Orleans. They're all just teams hovered around 500. We're talking about quarterback changes and this and that. It's the same old thing, and that doesn't make a difference who the coach is.
I'm looking here. I mean, Atlanta's 4-1 right now in the division in the NFC South, but they've lost their last 3 games, and Kirk Cousins was not good yesterday. And that's nobody wants to run away with it down there.
That's who they are.
And two of those teams we just mentioned from the NFC West and the NFC South are going to make the playoffs. And they're going to get fed to whoever from. And the thing is, I think the way it's set up too, they're going to get a home game. They're going to get a home game against those NFC
the wild card team.
Those NFC North teams that are going to roll through, that are going to be have 13 wins.
Well, what Detroit and Minnesota are doing is phenomenal.
Green Bay's right there. I mean, you can't.
Green Bay, yeah, you're right.
Green Bay's 9-3.
Yeah.
I mean, what Jordan loves
Chicago would be better off in the Big Ten right about now.
Chicago is a good coach. I mean, is a competent coach away from being 8-4 right now in the season.
Yeah, but you know what though? We can say that about a lot of coaches they had there.
Right.
Think about Lovey and John Fox, and who else did they have there that came in with some legitimate credentials? They all had good coaches, and it just still doesn't work. And you can blame the quarterback all you want, and they've gone through a number of them. But my question is, when has Chicago ever really had a great quarterback?
Jay Cutler.
I'll ask the question again. When has Chicago ever had a great quarterback?
He had some good years there.
Okay.
Jay Cutler and Brandon Marshall were a pretty good duo they had there.
I'm trying to remember what league championship game did they get to?
Did they get to the one? I thought they got to one and they lost in the.
Was that the one where Cutler was hurt and they ran that one other guy out there that nobody had ever heard of?
Kyle Orton?
No. Somebody else.
I thought they lost to Green Bay one year.
But I didn't think Cutler played. I thought Cutler had a shoulder.
I can't remember that. I don't know.
Well,
we need to take our final break, though,
Claibs.
Claibs. We need to take our final break, and when we come back, go over everything else right here on Lunch with Claibs and Joe.
Nobody wants a surprise in their jelly donut. That's because the middle is the most important part. At Graybar, we're at the middle of electrical and datacom jobs across the country. connecting installers, facility managers, and business owners with smart solutions for their most challenging projects, which means stocking and delivering crucial products on time and on budget, with no surprises, thanks to our nationwide logistics network. Yep, Graybar does that.
Who does this?
Final few minutes of lunch with Claibs and Joe, powered by Graybar. Claibs, you will be on assignment next week down at the winter meetings in Dallas. Hope to have you on for a few minutes of the show when while you're down there. But as we sit right now, any expectations for what will happen down there? Will Juan Soto sign his contract or announce where he's going, you think, next week?
Or I don't know. It would make sense. Scott Boras is trying to keep people engaged with regard to showing interest in Juan, trying to drive the price up. I think the question is, if he does sign, will he sign before or after Scott holds court with the mass media?
Where he goes through all of his little, cute little quotes and everything.
Well, he just has some observations about the game, and he's entitled to his opinion, and some of them aren't all bad. Remember, he works for the players, so whatever makes the player's life better, that's his job. It's going to be an interesting free agent situation. I spoke to, I guess, a half a dozen players over the last week for one reason or another. Some are free agents, some are not, but they felt like, man, this is going to happen sooner than later this year. Now, I think what you're dealing with is the term deferred has reared its head to the point where teams are now having to look at that as an option on how they sign players. Because for some teams, they don't have the money, or they don't have as much as they like to spend, whether it's the TV situation, whether it's a ticket sales situation. They don't have the comfort level that maybe they had 2-3 years ago. So if you can get a guy on deferred money, you may see a few more of those contracts take place. Now, there's plus and minuses to it. I know Ken Rosenthal made a great point that this will be a sticking point for the Players Association in 2026. And I think what the owners are doing is trying to force the hand of the players to get some sort of legitimate salary cap. Players have said over our dead bodies. I see both sides of it. But I look at the other sports who have a lot more labor stability, and their players are getting paid beyond handsome in some regards. But the problem I think baseball has, they don't have that national TV deal that baseball, that football and the NBA has, where in the NBA, you barely have to sell a ticket and you have enough money for your payroll.
Yeah.
So there's going to have to be some real conversation about what this whole thing looks like beyond this year. But I really think that guys are going to come in there looking to do business. And I think players saw what happened last year with so many guys going to camp late. It really throws their routine off. And I think they're going to take deals now. I don't think guys want to be stuck without a chair when the music stops like we saw last year, and guys are taking minimum deals.
Do you think how much will we know about the future of Nolan Arenado after next week's winter meetings?
I think you have a pretty good idea. I don't think this is something that's going to fester long. You know what needs to happen. To wait and wait and wait doesn't do anybody any good. Push the button, move on, and let's get this thing moving in a direction that both sides feel good about.
And then kind of have a roster set in place for what spring training looks like. Because I think once that's done, I think you're pretty much set. I mean, outside of a few moves here and there, I don't expect any kind of breaking news alerts of importance to come across in my email in regards to the Cardinals.
Well, with that said, though, and I agree with you, but I also think if the Cardinals didn't learn anything last year, they're going to have to structure their roster differently with regard to what do you look like coming off the bench? What do you look like from a speed perspective? Because stolen bases are here. And if you have guys that can run, that gives you a greater advantage. And you got to have guys who can throw. That was a big problem last year. So there's still some competition that's going to be had. But with that said, if you feel comfortable about 7 of your 9, then they need to be playing a lot in spring training just so they can get used to when the season starts, not play themselves into shape, be in shape and ready to take advantage, because wins are going to be hard to come by.
Claibs, the Blues came back home this after their New York area road trip, and looking right now with new head coach Jim Montgomery there, they still sit 3 teams back of the Western wildcard spot, sitting with 24 points. Calgary at 28 right now in that final wildcard spot. But so your thoughts on the Blues, what you've seen this past week?
Certainly an improvement from an effort standpoint. I still think they lack a little toughness. I know they, hoot and hollered against the Rangers, but I think you still need more accountability. I like the way they're playing defensively. Goaltending's been solid. You're getting a few more guys that are going harder to the net, and I think that's what they're going to have to do in order to be competitive. This next road trip is going to be important because they're going to go out west and face some of those teams that they're chasing. It is December 2nd. There's a lot of hockey to be played, but you have to start somewhere, and maybe it starts this week.
Claibs, finally in the NBA, can you explain the NBA Cup to me and exactly how that works?
Yeah, it's a tournament. That's all you need to know. Don't worry about it. It's a nice, event to have. It was trying to create some early season interest. And, in some cities it has, the teams that didn't win it poo-pooed it. But, there's an incentive. Was it $1 million?
Yeah.
And you play in Vegas where you can lose $1 million. But point being, it's something that they're trying to do. And I wouldn't be surprised to see another sport or two try that somewhere along the way. I wouldn't be surprised to see the NHL try this.
My thing with it is I don't understand how the scheduling works with how they, when teams, if you make the semifinals and the finals and everything, where do those games go that were supposed to be played? I mean, do those just canceled later on in the year? Like how does that work?
You know what? Someone else has that answer. I don't have that.
Thought maybe you would. Thought maybe you were the person to ask for that.
Because it's funny, about an hour and a half ago, I was having the same conversation about the availability of some players. And they said to me, hey, well, if you look at the middle of December, there's a lot of off days. I said, well, no, they're not necessarily off days. That's when this whole thing is decided in Vegas. So they leave the dates open, not knowing who's going to be part of the finals, in the semifinals. So it's something I think the league's got to work on trying to explain a little bit better. And by us not having a team locally, we probably don't pay as much attention to. We just turn the game on and watch it.
Yeah, and it's a cup game if they have the court, the special court. So
yeah, and think about the money.
Some are worse than others on that. My God, there are some that are just hard to watch.
But you know what? I think that can be said for any sport with regard to whether it's a uniform or a logo, or so everybody's going to have something that's going to be flawed. I think you throw it on the wall, some of it sticks, and when the ones that doesn't stick, you just say ugh.
Yeah.
So I get
the Suns last night or the other night. Theirs is fine. That's all good.
Which one you have a problem with?
The one, what is it? Philadelphia's.
I'm trying to think of what Phillies looks like. It's been so long since
I think it's all blue. I think Bulls go. I mean, there's some Bulls I think go all red. Like it's just the ones that are just like it's
now,
real bright.
Part of that is and you know
where
what?
It just sticks out.
Well, hold on. Part of that is for TV.
I know.
Now I'm told that some of those courts don't look that way when you go actually go to the games. So it's something the NBA has been playing with as far as its look on TV, but it's not always the same look when you go there in person.
Well, then if it's made for TV, then yeah, it needs to pop on TV then.
Well, it's popping.
Yeah. Yeah, this is Sixers. That's all blue that they have, and it's the entirely blue court for them.
Well, that's part of their team colors.
Claibs, safe travels to you this week down in Dallas. Look forward to any news that comes out of there, good or bad, for the Cardinals' future. I shouldn't say for the future, for the 2025 season. Hopefully, all of it's good for the distant future for the Redbirds. But have a safe trip down there.
We'll do the best we can.
All right. He is Mike Claiborne. I'm Joe Roderick. This has been another edition of Lunch with Claibs and Joe here on Claibs Online.
Can Graybar help my electrical and datacom jobs be more productive?
Yep. Our supply chain services are designed to do just that.
Like job site services?
Yep. We deliver the products you need where and when you need them, no matter your industry.
What if I have technical questions?
Yep. Our specialists are top-notch.
Emergency support?
Yep. Even after hours.
They're a unicorn.
When you need to keep your projects productive and profitable, rely on Graybar to help you get the job done right. No unicorns required. Yep, Graybar does that.